I'm Jamie Court, I'm president of Consumer Watchdog. We're here today because Amazon, Google are practically giving away their digital home assistants this holiday. You can pick up one for literally $29 at Home Depot. The fact is, these companies should be paying you to put these assistants in your home. And the reason is, a review of patents for these home assistants show they're far from there to help you. They're there to track you, to surveil you, and to sell you. And the public needs to be aware. If they're gonna buy an Amazon device or a Google device, they need to know these are listening devices. They're eavesdropping devices. They're listening for when you flush the toilet. They're listening to when your kids are silent and when your kids are screaming. They're listening to what you're listening to, and they're doing it all to collect data about you so they can sell you to advertisers and serve you up to advertisers. And this is the season where these companies who are claiming they want to help you get things done quicker and better are really putting a surveillance device in your home that is going to help them make a lot more profits next year. These patent applications that my colleague John Simpson is going to walk through with you are a home invasion. These patents describe surveillance systems that listen when Amazon and Google say their devices aren't supposed to be listening. These patents describe creepy behavior by corporations watching you and your children and what you do and what they do and what they watch and who they talk to and taking notes. It's consistent with what we've seen of other privacy violations, but goes far beyond anyone we've ever seen because it's in your home. This is a home invasion robbery, it's not a holiday gift. You've gotta be protected and you gotta know what you're getting into. And Amazon and Google need to come back and answer the question of whether they're using all the functionality in these patents and whether or not they're willing to turn them off. As some of their privacy provisions say, they have them off now. But tomorrow, any of these companies can change their privacy policies and turn on any of these creepy provisions, even if they're not on today. So the minute that you put a home digital device in your home, you have to know that your home is being surveilled by these companies, and you have to be okay with it. Otherwise, you shouldn't buy it. It's right there in the patents. And the study documents it through pictures that my colleague John Simpson right now is going to walk through. John's the privacy director of Consumer Watchdog, and he's been charting these activities for over a decade. I think this is the creepiest type of privacy problems we've seen ever from Google and Amazon, and there have been a lot of creepy ones. So I'm going to turn it over to John right now.
Alexa, are you listening?
Hi, I'm here. I start listening when I hear the wake word.
Google, hello Google, are you listening? Google may have went to sleep. Google, are you listening?
So you do it later, John.
It's okay.
Google, are you listening? Google, are you listening?
Okay, Google, are you listening?
Okay, Google, are you
I'm a
listening?
little lost.
So am I, like that. Okay, Google, are you listening?
I get confused sometimes.
Why don't you walk through the...
Yeah, so what we've got is a report which we've left at the table if you need copies that really goes through in great detail what the company's visions and aspirations are, which are virtually Orwellian for these devices. So this is Alexa's own thing sort of telling you importantly that they only listen when you wake it up, and that's some sort of quasi promise to you that we don't think they're likely to be keeping, because when you go into the patents, you see this sort of plan that they've got to receive the voice stream, even though they're not listening to the wake word, and then analyze a trigger word and go through all these sorts of things, and this is another.
Explain trigger word. What
A
it is.
trigger word is what this is. If it's a sentence where you might say the vacation was wonderful, I really enjoyed Orange County and the beaches in the San Diego Zoo. So they've got enough of an algorithm to pick out those key words and then understand that, Santa Barbara Winery and Wine are things that this person has been speaking like. Now, that particular full conversation might not be sent back, but they've got the algorithm available right there to analyze it and pull out the key texts to then send just text back, which wouldn't be voice, which might allow them to be in the letter of what they're claiming to do in respecting your privacy, but not at all the spirit. They're gathering potentially the text. So basically these things can be wide awake and listening to everything you do and say all the time. And this is a Google patent application which kind of shows their vision of having the device tied to other devices throughout the home, such as the things that they've got with Nest, which would be a thermostat, the ability to dim your lights and all those things, but it also is the ability to sense and know virtually everything that's going on in the privacy, supposedly privacy of your own home. So now here's a particularly interesting thing. This is something that, again, patent application. What they're envisioning doing is being able to read what the title of the book is next to your bed and then advertise things to you based on what you're reading. Who else knows what they're going to do with knowledge about what you're reading? Librarians have a special sort of thing where they have gone to court to protect lists of what people read because they think that tells so much about you that they don't want to have any part of revealing it. That's a standard operating procedure among libraries, public libraries. This is just a tremendously intrusive thing. Here, this is something that they say, okay, here's an idea that we're patenting. These sensors, the digital device that's listening, all of that can detect that there's children in the room, detect that they're whispering or perhaps quiet while they're while active. Out of that, they infer mischief, and they report findings to you. Well,
No, it's not necessarily to you.
well, it's supposedly to you, but it may be to wherever. Again, this is an Orwellian vision that they are spelling out in their patent applications. To us, that is a clear expression of what they intend to do. Another aspect of this that is very troublesome is that once this stuff is recorded, virtually anyone walking by the device could have access to it. Google does make some warning about that being a possibility, but it is also troublesome that these things, what they record, what they have, is been hackable, and there have been cases where people have been able to go in via the internet of things and get access to this information. Law enforcement officials have been known to subpoena what's on one of these digital devices, which just, again, goes to show that these are tremendous tools to gather large amounts of information. We just simply don't think most people understand the capabilities of the devices to intrude and to really discover much more about you than you ever intended to happen. So again, people need to know this if they're going to go down the route of using the devices. You may think you're smart and that this is slick technology, but there is a tremendous price to pay for it. And in the very plans and patents that have been filed by the company, we can see where this is all leading, and it is not a pretty picture.
John, can you bring up that child slide again, because I do want to make up one point before you take some questions and.
There's no limit.
Evan, can you, is that you?
I don't have it.
All right, well, all right, so I think the big point on the children is this, that these devices, say that these devices claim to only keep track of you when you use your wake word, your hot word for Google. But the fact is, these patents say that they are listening for can be listening for children who are moving quickly in a room, but aren't using their words. Therefore, they're mischievous children. Now, why would you collect such information? Obviously, because that's a way of marketing those children, marketing those parents, tracking information. When you're listening for trigger words, as these patents describe, these patents don't describe only listening for trigger words when a consumer says, Alexa, are you awake?
Yes, I'm here.
Are you listening, Alexa? When do you listen, Alexa?
Alexa, are you listening?
Hi, I'm here. I start listening when I hear the wake word.
What these patents describe is that they're always watching, they're always listening, and not necessarily when you just use a wake word. That may very well be, if it's happening now, a violation of their privacy policy. And we're going to be reporting what we've learned from these patents to the Federal Trade Commission and see if they have indeed been in violation of their prohibition not to be deceptive in what they advertise. A very real possibility, as I said at the beginning also, is these are all Trojan horse functions that haven't been turned on. And the goal is to get these devices into people's homes now and turn on some of these added functions later as a way of tracking information. What this is all about is making money. Both Google and Amazon, as well as other companies, make their money by having more information about us and our families. And when they do that, they then sell access to advertisers. These patents very clearly describe giving access to advertisers for recreational products, for skiing, for all sorts of different types of products, giving them access to our homes. And I guarantee you that while we're asking the questions now, if people put these in their homes, these devices are going to be asking children and all sorts of family members more and more questions, such as the one outlined in one of these descriptions. I notice you have a book on the side of your bed called The Godfather. Would you like to watch the movie tonight? That is at least somewhat transparent because it's asking you and maybe you can shut it off. But when they're talking to your children, as one of these patent applications describes, a 15-year-old child who detects holding a basketball about whether they want to go to sports camp, suddenly the parents got to pick up the tab for $1,000 for sports camp. So this is a way of really commodifying our lives, which is why we're really urging people not to engage it. And we do want to take a hammer to one of these devices, the cheaper one, in a second, but we want to first take any questions before we do that.
Well, what should consumers do if they have these in their homes? What's your advice? Who don't want to quit using them?
I advise if people want to use this to turn it off and to put them to sleep when they don't want them on, and to turn them on when they want the devices. Don't leave these devices on all the time.
Unplug it.
Yeah, take the power source out.
Take the power source away completely. Unplug it. Look, what we're seeing here is, I think, a future where these things are going to be able to listen to everything from your confidential conversations to how many times you flush the toilet to where your children move, the books on your bedside tables. They're going to know when you go to sleep, and they're going to know who you woke up with. I mean, that's the kind of thing that this is ultimately going to be able to do.
These are all examples, by the way, are actually in the patent applications if you read the study. The description they are patenting a technique to listen to toilet flushes, to listen to what time you go to sleep, to listen to all sorts of types of activity in your home. Now, I can't think of any good reason why they'd want to listen to your toilet flushes, but I imagine these companies, which have relationships with all sorts of advertisers, can probably come up with one. So obviously, the type of activity they're patenting here isn't about serving you, it's about serving them. And consumers need to know that if they want one of these devices, they can keep it in their home, just unplug it, take away the power when you don't want it to have the power, you want to have the power.
To be clear, the patent information you're talking about is for proposed new services rather than those which are already in existence
No,
and
it's just
operation?
proposed for uses, it doesn't distinguish between the two. So
But I mean, is it active right now? Is this?
we don't know, because we can't get in that box. But we do know from their privacy policies that they allegedly are only listening when they're awake. However, Google, we know, has functionality that does have this type of surveillance all around your home and is always listening, so I don't even think they make that claim.
And Google, it's mentioned in the study, Google actually said that it wasn't listening, and then they in fact were, and sending stuff back, even though they hadn't heard wake words, and they, quote, tweaked, unquote, their software, so that wouldn't happen. And again, with a lot of this, I mean, I look at patent applications as serious expressions of corporate intention. And if it's not today with all of it, well, wait till next week, or they wouldn't be patenting it. And that's the troubling thing.
And Google, are you listening now when you don't hear, Google, are you listening when you don't hear a hot word?
Hi, Google.
Hi, Google. Okay, Google. Bye. Okay, Google. Are you listening when you don't hear a hot word?
Sorry, I can't help with that yet.
They must have been listening to something, or we wouldn't have gotten that answer, would we? I mean,
Let me go to
other
the phone line,
questions.
let's go to the phone line,
Yeah.
see if there's
No,
any.
I have a quick question too, if we want to do.
Go ahead, yeah, that's fine, then I'll.
Well, basically, is there a greater fear here? Obviously, you're described it as a potential Trojan horse for advertisers, or do you have a bigger fear beyond that? What's your greatest
Well,
concern?
look, I don't know that they are not using this functionality now. I think John's being very generous in the assumption that they're living up to their privacy policy, which is why we're
Well,
alerting the Federal Trade Commission to this fact.
They have a record of not living up to their privacy policies. In fact, we brought the complaint that resulted in Google being fined $22.5 million for not living up to its privacy policies with the Safari web browser. So we don't trust these guys.
But I would say.
For good reason.
I would say that I think ubiquitous advertising is one problem, but there's a greater problem. Anytime that any company has this much information about you, anytime any company knows when you flush your toilet, when you go to sleep, it can cause real problems for you. Even if that company claims it's gonna protect that privacy with its corporate life, the fact is that information often gets out in the open. It can get stolen, it can get hacked, it can be in the hands of data brokers. And these companies can change their privacy policy overnight. So for instance, we worry a lot about a consumer who's going into a job application and maybe has cancer and doesn't want that employer to know. Well, this type of information can certainly talk about the medical health of the family, the medical health of the household. It can certainly talk about how often you go to the bathroom is an indicator of your physical health. Life insurance companies would like to know that. Employers would like to know that. Health insurance companies probably want to know that. So a lot of companies would do a lot to get their hands on this information. Google and Amazon said, we're never going to let it out in the public domain. All we do is tell advertisers if they want to reach you, we're going to reach certain anonymized people. But I don't know that we can believe them. And even if we can't believe them, the fact is having all of your information from your home in the hands of some corporation is going to be a problem one day. It will be a problem for you one day. And I don't think it's just that you're going to be marketed things, or your children will be marketed things that you can't afford. It's likely going to be, it will determine whether you get a better loan. It will determine whether you get a better insurance policy or a better cost for an insurance policy. It could determine a lot of things in your life. And especially in the day where even the biggest the credit bureau in America got hacked. If Equifax can get hacked, I'm certain and if Equifax and the Democratic Party can get hacked, I'm certain anybody can get hacked, even companies as sophisticated as these. So I think the important part is it's that user beware. You know, if you're going to use these devices, know that's a real challenge, and if you really want to use them, just be aware that you should not always leave them plugged in and not think they're just sitting there waiting for you to give them a command, because they are taking their own directive from the corporations, not from you.
Let's go to the different questions.
Anybody else in the room?
The participant lines are unmuted.
Is there anyone on the conference line who wants a question? Anybody on the conference line with a question? No? Okay. Anyone in the room with a question?
What
Okay.
triggered you to look at the patents, to pull them and look at them?
Well, we've been looking into these companies for a long, long time, and we've studied other patent applications at other times. But the growth of these home devices poses probably one of the biggest threats we've ever seen to privacy. So the patent applications are a natural place, and maybe the only place that we're actually going to get public information about what a corporation's true intent is. And time again, it tells us a lot. One big example was when Google was collecting unencrypted data from Wi-Fi networks through its Google Maps program, and said it was doing it unintentionally. In fact, Google had patented a device to collect all that information and was war driving, basically based on this patent. Google had to pay a fine, there's a pending lawsuit we're involved in. That patent application told an awful lot to us about Google's intentions. And in fact, at that time, I think Google, we're still trying to ascertain this, but Google may have backed away from some of those patent applications. Another good example is that patent actually, some of the developers of that Y-Spy war driving program developed the Nintendo, the Pokemon on the Go problem. That came out of the people who created that patent. So when you look at a patent application, you often find the same players and the same type of intent, and it's an excellent way to go in terms of looking at these things.
Are you aware of any law enforcement applications? We heard an anecdotal story of a murder that was solved when some husband was overheard, I don't know, plotting to kill his wife or killing his wife or whatever. Are you aware of any law enforcement applications that would reveal?
Law enforcement has sought subpoenas to get the devices, and I believe that one of these things they were able to determine that water had been used. This was another smart device in the home that was tied to this. They were able to determine that water had been used to
Clear the body.
clear the, wash away blood and stuff like that possibly. So, I mean, the point being that information there is potentially accessible to law enforcement, and I guess, with a warrant, law enforcement, if they're investigating a crime, would naturally go there with a warrant.
So you're concerned not only
I can't name a specific case, but that has happened. Yes.
So you're concerned not only about these devices themselves, but all of the third-party devices connected to them.
Yeah, that's part of it. This is, I mean, some of these things that we outlined there rely not only on the listening, but also on some video that's all tied together, that through the cloud is then tied back to Google's or Amazon's other services. I mean, so that they, not only can they get a picture of what you're doing in the home by hearing what you're saying, they can get photos of it from the video monitor that's tied to it, and quite possibly the other stuff that you do on your Google account. So you get this really revealing portrait. And we just think that people need to understand what all is being gathered about them before they go down the road of adopting this technology.
And also children, and families. It's one thing when you make a decision online, if you're gonna, use a site or use a platform that collects your information. But I think most of us aren't thinking that there's gonna be a device that's actually checking out what our kids are reading, what's on their bedside table, what's on their walls, when they're holding a basketball, which was the example in the patent application. A 15-year-old's holding a basketball, and we mark it in sports camp. I mean, that's creepy. That's really creepy, and we don't draw lines in these families between adults who are capable of making, certain rational choices in children. And I think these patents don't contemplate any lines. And I guess the point of airing the patent applications is to push back on Google and Amazon to say, okay, your patents say you can do this. Tell us whether you will or won't, whether you are or aren't, because this is the only glimpse we really have into their true intention.
How far back do these patent applications go?
These are just relatively recent ones, yeah. I mean, they're in the report,
They're
this-
footnoted pretty
and
well.
footnoted, so you can go back in and see. the
Remember,
ones
this is
that-
a really recent phenomenon, and I think this is the first Christmas that they're trying to get in your Christmas stocking in any concerted way, and that's why it's such a particularly dangerous time if people aren't aware of the dangers. They are literally, $30 for this device.
Actually less, it's
$29.95. So, for a $30 device, you wonder, how can I be so connected? Well, they're connected to you too, and that's what people have to remember, and they have to remember these are big corporations with other intentions. There's reasons they wanna do it. You wanna take a whack at it, John?
Yeah, so, look, I mean,
Yeah.
someone asked what we really think we should do with these, and we said, look, if you're gonna make the mistake of having one, then by all means, only plug it in when you actually wanna use it. But most of the time, our approach would be really quite simple. We think you should that's our answer.
That's the shot right there. Did everyone get that?
Any questions?
Is that a technology version of Pete Townsend?
Let me just add one quick thing. I'm not a Luddite. Jamie's not a Luddite. We believe that technology is going to contribute in the future probably to better and more meaningful lives for people. But when technologists take advantage of their technology without fully explaining it, without telling everyone what the downsides are, and that's what we have here, I think that's a bad thing, and I think that people like us have to stand up and demand that the tech giants of the world get a soul and act with humanity.
And since I believe they never will, we can at least rein back their engineers, because the truth is, the engineers are the ones that tell them in a patent application what they can do, and we are the ones that tell them what they should do. And if people, as a condition of using these devices, demand that there be walls and lines and cages that they don't cross, they will. But this is the time to push back. If we let this holiday season go thinking these are the panacea that they're being pushed as, without some kind of protections to make sure we're not being surveilled the way their patent applications describe, it's going to be like that forever. So this is the time to put our foot down, put our hammer down, fight back. Thank you. If anyone on the line wants to reach John later, John, what's your cell?
Best phone number for me is 310-292-1902.
Thanks, Edward.